So hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar on the webPOS and Hardware Station. And my name is Olafur Jonsson and I'm a product owner for LS Central devices here at LS Retail. Now before we get started, I would like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. This webinar is being recorded and we will distribute a link to the recording shortly after the webinar. All participants are muted and we will have a Q&A session at the end. So as we progress through the webinar, please type in your questions in the question panel found at the question console. And I will then read out loud the questions at the end of the session and try to answer your questions. We know the Windows POS, the flexibility and configurability user-wise. It is a Windows application, runs on a stationary device or a tablet, and can connect peripherals directly. Now it is brilliant offline, but lacked as a remote online POS, except if you were using a terminal server. Now the webPOS is an HTML-based POS that has all the same functionality and more flexibility regarding user interface with the new powerful HTML JavaScript functions. As it's browser-based, it is very strong, both for online remotely and still supports everything that we have been doing for the on-prem scenario. And not just that, it is operating system independent, so you can run it on Windows, Android, and iOS, and we make that even easier by our LS Central AppShell. To connect to traditional retail peripherals, we support that, but with a Windows service which we called LS Hardware Station, or in some cases even through the LS Central AppShell. Now let's look at this in more detail, starting with the architecture. Now with Business Central, Microsoft laid out its roadmap to SaaS, software as a service. Now that plan included to use modern clients only and to move the developing environment to Visual Studio and AL. Also to have the solution in components, so that each component is an extension that has dependency to other extensions or apps. Now one of the benefits of this will be that upgrading will be much easier, as the plan is to be able to replace the underlying apps without the need of going through a large upgrade project that have proven to be an hindrance in customers upgrading and getting new functionality and features. And on that note, to distribute LS Central solution, keeping up to date on the newest version, we have been introducing LS Go Current, and I encourage you to take a look at that. Now with that tool, you have a simple option to update your system without a lot of pain. But back to the plan. Now we are in this plan at the stage that we are using specific LS retail clusters to run the solution. But when fully in place, and we will be at the far right of this drawing, it will be run on a standard Microsoft shared cluster. And then this picture will look like a building of Lego blocks with lots of different apps building up a customer solution. So in regarding to the LS Central solution, that is an app that depends on Business Central, and on top of that we have other extensions like the localization, and then there will be customer extension apps and possibly other from app source, etc. Now the POS in this picture is a part of LS Central app today, but it will be a separate extension like shown on that picture that will include the core part of the POS code. Now this setup is something that the partners know, as it is like today when we're using POS DLLs that partner can't change. Now this will be the same. It will be a locked POS extension that LS Retail will maintain, but you can have an effect on how it's changed by requests as before and use events to implement your business needs. So extending the POS. The way to extend the POS and the LS Central solution in general is through customer extensions and using integration events. Now, before, partner used to be able to just dive into the code and change it, and you can in an on-premise setup where you have access to the code, but we don't recommend it. The recommended way is using events and extensions for the future. So when the solution will be deployed in an all-cloud scenario, so the code is stored in the cloud, the only possibility is to extend the solution by its customer extensions. So that is definitely the way to go forward. Now there are 3 deployment scenarios for LS Central solution. There's the on-premise, a mixture of standalone POS or POS connecting to a standalone POS server, and the data is replicated to the server in HQ. Now this is environment very familiar to us that we all know very well. But then there's the hybrid cloud. There we have a dynamic 365 cloud server, and we have a mixture of online POS connecting directly to the cloud or standalone POS, and data is replicated from store servers to the cloud. So in this setup, you can start to take advantage of having your data in the cloud, ready for powerful analytics, advanced BI, and other intelligent cloud tools. So this really has sort of the best of both worlds. In this regard, I would like to point out that next week there will be a webinar on the hybrid cloud where Mattias Mattiasson, our product director for LS Central, will discuss that in detail, and I encourage you to listen to that. Now the third setup is the in-cloud setup. Now that is a pure cloud where the online POS connects directly to the Dynamics 365 cloud server. But the important thing here is that the webPOS works perfectly in all of those scenarios and supports you no matter what plan you want to follow when moving into Business Central and the cloud. Now the POS setup is easy, simple, and fast. The layout of the POS is defined in LS Central by creating panels and placing controls on them, specifying their properties, and then adding skin, fonts, color, etc. The configuration is then stored in the LS Central database, so it's very easy to define and maintain the layout centrally. LS Central then creates the POS pages at runtime. Now this is the exact same process as we know from the Windows POS, but in development we need to be aware of the fundamental difference in behavior of the web client versus the Windows client, or the JavaScript add-in versus the .NET add-in. Now the POS is written as an add-in. In the Windows client it was a .NET add-in, but in the web POS it's a JavaScript add-in. And JavaScript add-ins are asynchronous, but the .NET add-ins are synchronous. So if I try to explain this, in the Windows client, when you press a button, the service tier will wait for the POS action to finish before continuing. So this is asynchronous. But when you press a button on the web POS, it will go into a web request and group other things that happen in the code unit server side before sending everything back as an answer to the POS. So the POS will get the answer asynchronously, and this needs to be taken into account when developing extensions to the POS. Now we've also added 3 new functions in the POS API, and that is the add HTML, add JavaScript, add style. Now these are very generic functions where you can just send your own HTML or JavaScript to the web POS, and they are very powerful functions that can be used to make extension and modify the behavior of the POS. But going forward, we will continue in moving the POS into the new Business Central architecture that we discussed on the second slide. And then when the solution will run in a pure Microsoft shared cluster, the solution cannot longer contain any .NET DLLs that have been used previously to program the solution. Now it still can today in the LS Center specific cluster that's running the solution, but next year Microsoft plans are to have the solution in shared cluster, and then it can no longer contain any DLL. So we are working heavily on removing all of those DLLs and have this a solution without any .NET DLLs. Our plan in this scenario, in this case, is that at the end of this year, we will have a version like this where we can test out in our dedicated cluster. And we are also planning more. We are planning to do some redesign in phases, moving into using more standard web components in the POS solution. Now, this will take some time, and we will follow Microsoft on their track on moving that solution into a pure SaaS environment. But what we have seen with this change of moving from the Windows POS with its footprint on a Windows platform over to the web platform with a webPOS, that the POS is no longer regarded as just a good old fixed POS machine, but as a flexible POS that can serve different needs on different form factors. Now, an excellent example of this, in my view, is that what our hospitality team did with our hospitality self-service POS, the Easy Burger, which we can see here on the screen. Now, that was a setup that our team made and was showcased in the NRF show in New York in January. Now, using just the standard web templates of the POS, they designed a self-service hamburger POS that ran on a Windows machine inside the self-serving kiosk with payment through LS Pay. Now, this self-serving POS is set up and maintained just like any other POS in the LS Central back office. So this shows the strength and the flexibility of the environment that we have now, and really that the web POS can put on many phases. But when operating the web POS in a browser and even on a mobile device, that can create some challenges. For instance, the simplicity of needing to start a browser and logging into LS Central, and also how to use this built-in feature that some of the mobile devices have or that are connected to those mobile devices. Now, to address this, we created the LS Central AppShell. Now, with that app, you can run the POS by a click of a button after doing some pre-configuration like the URL and the user information. And in the Android version of the LS Central AppShell, the web POS can have access to resources on the mobile device. That can be a printer or a payment device. Now, we are seeing a lot of more devices on the market that have built-in features like this, like printing and payment. And on this slide, we can see the white one, the PAX A920, and that is a very good example of such a device that has a slot to insert the card for payment purposes and also a printer. And devices like these can be ideal in some scenarios. And with the Android version of the LS Central AppShell, the web POS run in a browser can access this and use directly. Now, the LS Central AppShell is available on different platforms. Now, on Android, that we discussed, and that is our mobile platform of choice. Now, the LS Central AppShell Android version has the richest features like the full device support. But it is also available on the iOS platform. But there, we have support the ability to run the POS by a click of a button and also to access the camera on the iOS to scan. And with the upcoming release of LS Central 16, we are releasing a Windows version to run on both a traditional stationary Windows device as well as a Windows tablet. Now, the Windows version will have the same features of simplifying running the POS, but additionally, we are addressing some issues that we have previously been solving with our LS Start program. So in the Windows version, there's a possibility to define a number of configs of the POS or LS Central, and the user can select them at runtime. Or it can work as the other LS Central AppShells, that you choose a single one that is started automatically when the Windows AppShell is run. Now in this version, it is also possible to configure the AppShell itself to close when the user logs off the POS. And there's also the possibility to limit the POS user from being able to exit the browser directly. Now the Windows version will not have the same device support as the Android version. As it's a Windows version, it can use the hardware station to connect to devices. Now the LS Central AppShell for Windows has a nice feature of using a distributed config support. Now we added this feature after we had some feedback that we had from the NRF show. So with this feature, it is now possible to create a config for the AppShell centrally and then send it to the devices that will run the app. Now that happens in steps. So the first step to implement this is that you create centrally an XML file that includes the config info needed for the AppShell. The same information you would generally input in the config screen of the AppShell itself. Now the next step would be to send the XML file to all the devices that are planned to use the LS Central AppShell, and that can be done with a distribution software or a MDM, a mobile data management software. Now the next step is that on the device, the LS Central AppShell will detect if there's an XML config file present, and the user can accept to load it and use the settings from that file. Now then the user can test the settings, and then after that the LS Central AppShell is ready to use. Now the LS Central AppShell also has now the feature of exporting a config from the app, and the thought behind this is that when you're creating the XML file, it can be very handy to start with one mobile device, setting up the config as you like it, and then simply export that to a file that can be used to distribute. And this feature is available in the Android version, and we will soon add this to the Windows version also. Now the LS Hardware Station, it was created to allow POS to have a connection to retail peripherals. Now, as said, this is a Windows service that uses .NET, so it needs a Windows device to run on. Now, today's Windows machine come in many shapes and forms, from micro devices to full-blown stationary devices. So there's a lot of option when it comes to selecting a device where you want to host the hardware station. Now the hardware station is configured using the hardware station management portal. Now that is a web-based administrative interface to manage the hardware station. And from that portal, you can create new devices, like adding a printer, and configure the device if additional configuring information is needed. Now from there, it is also possible to perform basic tests on the device that was created, like sending a line to the printer and see if it's printed out, or a transaction to an EFT device. Now the hardware station can share peripherals between many POS devices, which is nice and can lower investment cost and simplify setup and operations. Now it is also simple to select what hardware station the POS uses. And that can be pre-configured in LS Central hardware profile, where you specify that this POS will use this hardware station, or the user of the POS can simply select on the fly which hardware station they want to use at the moment by scanning our QR code that is placed next to each hardware station. And when that is scanned, the hardware profile that the POS used is switched. And this can even be programmed to a button on the POS, so the user can simply press a button to switch over to another hardware station. So with this, the POS can easily switch between a number of hardware stations in your store, which can be a good feature to have. Now the hardware station peripherals support. Now it was created to allow POS to have connection to those peripherals. Now we support OPOS devices and LS Pay to connect to EFT devices. Now we don't have all OPOS devices ready at the moment, but we support printer, both OPOS and the WinPrint. And then we support cash drawer, scanner, line display, serial device, and we recently added the magnetic stripe reader, the MSR support. We are working on the scanner scale and then the dual display. And when we will do the dual display, the first phase will be the same as it is with the window, but we intend to do the interactive, have it interactive, where the customer can interact like answering some poll or service, correcting email or whatever you want. And regarding where we see this planned, our design is basing this on using the POS when we have eliminated the NODLL'S. So this would be something that we would be looking at the end of this year when we have the NODLL'S POS ready. And the hardware station, as said, connects you to EFT terminals. And to do that, we have a brilliant solution called LS Pay, which is a product of LS Retail that is giving you the ability to connect to many PSPs. Now, the LS Pay engine shields the host that is using it, the hardware station in this case, from having to know the detail about each and every payment service provider implementation, the ports, etc. in use. This is all handled by the LS Pay engine, and the only thing we need to know, the hardware station needs to know, is the common API of the LS Pay. Now, the LS Pay team is constantly working on and adding plugins. So for list of supported payment providers in each region at any given time, I would advise you to see the LS Pay information pack on our LS Partner portal. Now that includes current information about the availability for each region. But if you don't want to go the way with LS Pay, or you have interest or need to connect to your own PSP or payment provider, the hardware station has the modularity design that gives you the ability, using the same API as LS Pay does, to create your own custom implementation of an EFT connection. So you're getting the full functionality there. So in this case, the choice is yours, what way you want to go, but we definitely recommend to use LS Pay as with the simplicity and the flexibility that you have from that. Now the LS Central team is working on adding the support of payment tokens into the solution. Now a payment token is a single reference to a given card, and it's unique for issuer, card, and merchant. Now in the POS today, we have the EFT flow where the POS can perform the standard EFT functions like purchase, void, and refund, and have the option to use the EFT transaction ID to identify the payment when doing refund or void. Now with the addition of payment tokens, the POS will be able to use the tokens in the EFT functions, and new EFT operations will be supported, like getting a pre-auth token, updating pre-auth token, and finalize a payment transaction using a token. Now these new EFT functions will be especially useful for our solutions like the LS Hotels and our hospitality solutions. But in this case, please note that the availability of the token functionality will always be limited by the availability of token support from the PSP that is in use at the retailer in each scenario. So meaning that after we have finished the payment token support and the solution, if you're using a PSP that does not support this token functionality, then obviously the solution cannot work regarding to payments token. So just good to bear that in mind. Now the tokenization and the system components. The token support will affect a number of system components of LS Central, such as the customer order and the e-commerce, and it is an important part of our unified commerce strategy. So it will be a good addition to the POS, as we know that the POS plays a key role in all of those processes. Now, one of the important parts of the POS implementation in some countries is the fiscalisation. So different fiscal requirements are from country to country, but the common thing is that the POS needs to talk to a fiscal unit and get some kind of an okay before proceeding. Now, these fiscal units are different between countries and can be implemented as software, like using a web service, or some kind of fiscal device, like a USB sticker or fiscal printer, etc. Now, we recommend to use the LS Hardware Station to implement the fiscal solution in each country. And after going through some discussion on this with our partner channel, we have created a fiscal starter pack that includes a demo of creating a custom serial device implementation in the hardware station. And to describe this a little, the LS Hardware Station devices, they have a DLL implementation of all of those devices that come in the package with the hardware station. But these implementations can be overwritten or replaced by partners with their implementation. And our sample code shows how to create a custom serial device implementation for that purposes. So in this starter pack that we put together, and that is available from LS Retail now, and to get this at the moment, you have to go to our support department. Now, this package consists of a general description document on how to customize the hardware station DLLs. It also contains a demo.NET project that shows how to implement such a serial device. And in that, there are some injection points for which you can put your code for different fiscal requirements, like connecting a web service, etc. Now, in this demo, this is using the file command in the operating system to do something, but it can be replaced by whatever implementation you want to do. And lastly, this demo includes an AL code unit that shows a code that would be used in the POS in AL, and it shows how to, from the POS, to communicate with this custom serial device, how to send data to it, how to receive data from this device, and also how to implement some error handling. The important thing there is if you go that way, if you use the LS Hardware Station to implement this fiscal solution, it will work. It will be an interface that works both for the in-cloud and the on-prem setup, which is important. As we have seen, we have multiple options in connecting the webPOS to devices. So as we said, we have the standard way of using the LS Hardware Station, and then the LS Central AppShell for Android has also the option to connect to printer Neve devices. So the design options are there and can be used for flexibility. The POS can mix and match those in any way that you want. So for instance, every POS can use one or more hardware station, and typically we see same POS have a local hardware station setup to connect to local EFT devices, and then a shared hardware station to connect to a printer. And one POS can use number of hardware station connection at each given time. The POS, the webPOS running inside the LS Central AppShell can also use the hardware station like the POS as we described on another machine. But this Android version can also connect directly to pattern printers. And in this scenario, we recently added to the LS Central AppShell the Epson printing library that supports a number of printers, both directly connected or networkly connected. So with that, the LS Central AppShell can even send printing to network connected printers. So the question then comes, which way is the best to use when designing the setup of your solution? Well, that really depends on the requirements in each case. So let's look at some customer cases to sort of clarify what we mean by that. Now, the first customer example that we want to mention is an example where a customer, a retailer, wanted to add a small copy shop feature or setup in a part of his retail store. Now there they wanted to use to serve the customers using tablet devices. So the setup there was that they set up Android tablet devices that use the LS Central AppShell for Android. And as they wanted to have pads with them to handle the payment, the LS Central AppShell was used to connect to a Wi-Fi connected ATM pad. But in this coffee shop corner, there was also a stationary Windows device running the webPOS, and on that stationary device, there was a hardware station. And to that was connected a printer, a drawer, and also a locally connected ATM pad. So in this case, the tablets used the Wi-Fi connected pads to handle the payments, but the printing was through the hardware station on that stationary device. Another example, and a little more complex, was from a ferry company. Now those have a number of business scenarios taking place in the ship at any given time. There's standard retail there, a number of those setups. There are some hospitality setups, and then in this case there was a card deck where they wanted to deliver some pre-ordered goods to cars. So when designing this, it was decided that for the card deck functionality, they would use mobile devices to handle that functionality there. And then on the retail shops, there was a standard use of the webPOS with device, printer, drawer, scanner directly connected, and the pin pad through the hardware station. The hospitality setup was the same, but there also the hardware station was used to connect to KDS printers that were used in that solution. So there are a number of possibilities of mixing and matching the setup of device depending on what fits best in each case. And to better understand the possibilities, we have some customer journey documentation and videos on the LS Central implementations on our website, but we have also increased our how-to videos on our YouTube channel on things like setting up the hardware station, configuring LS Central, and all the steps needed to do that, and also some specific videos on how to configure different type of EF devices using the LS Pay. And what we will do is we will increase those videos as they have been very well received from our partner channel as a how-to documentation. Now, next month, we are planning a webinar session on our mobile solutions, where we are going to talk about mobile inventory and how to simplify inventory management in store. but we will also show an app that might be especially interesting to the market as the status is in the world today with COVID-19. Now, we've been working on a mobile app, which is downloaded to customers' own mobiles that we call the Scan Pay Go, which is a zero-touch solution. Now, this is an Android app that the customer uses, as I said, on his own mobile phone. And with it, the customer can scan the barcode of products of interest, and they will be added to the basket of the app. Now, there he can use shopping list and recipes, and when he has finished his payment, he can he finished adding the items that he wants. He can finish the payment using the available options in the app and leave the store. So it is and can be a zero-touch functionality. Now, this is in development, and we will demonstrate this in more detail in our upcoming webinar in June on our mobile solution. So please don't miss that. If you're interested in a solution like this, we wanted to give you a little teaser on that in this webinar. So with that, I want to thank you so much for attending today's webinar. And if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to contact me via email. And so on behalf of LS Retail, I want to thank you very much for joining me today. Stay safe and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.